Elon, Max doesn't have his lunchbox." The shout came from Melissa as Elon Musk backed out of the driveway, already flustered. He tapped the brakes and leaned his head out the window, scanning the passenger seat where Max was fiddling with a toy rocket. "No lunchbox." "No problem, we'll improvise," Elon said quickly, flashing a grin that was more panic than confidence. Clara, in the back seat, rolled her eyes so hard it looked like it might hurt. He forgot it. Again. Max, 6, didn't seem to care. "Can I just have chips instead?" "See? He's a solutions guy," Elon quipped, but Clara didn't even crack a smile. The morning drop-off at Maple Grove Elementary was a mess. Elon pulled into the circular drive 10 minutes late. Kids were already inside, parents long gone. Clara slammed the car door without a word. Max lingered, looking up at Elon with wide eyes. "You'll be okay?" Elon asked. "Yep." Max chirped. "Even if I starve?" Elon watched them walk away and sighed. This wasn't the morning he'd envisioned. He was trying desperately, sincerely, but blending into someone else's family wasn't exactly a skill he developed while building rockets and disrupting global industries. The reckoning came that afternoon. When Elon returned to pick the kids up, Samuel was already there. Dr. Samuel Carter, oncologist, ex-husband, and father of Clara and Max, impeccably dressed in navy scrubs and polished shoes, clipboard in hand even at school pickup, as if time itself bowed to his efficiency. Elon stepped out of his Tesla, trying to look casual. Samuel didn't greet him. "Max told me he didn't have his lunch today." "Right," Elon said, scratching the back of his neck. "There was a system malfunction." "Malfunction," Samuel repeated, his tone dry as dust. "You had one job this morning." "It's not like I sent him into orbit," Elon joked. "Except you're not his astronaut. You're his driver. Temporary. Let's stick to that." The words hit Elon harder than he expected. Melissa stepped between them before it could escalate. "Sam," she said firmly, "we've talked about this. Elon's helping. He's not replacing you." Samuel's eyes flicked to her, then back to Elon. "Helping means remembering the basics. If you want to play family, you'd better study the manual." Then he turned to his children, who had just arrived. Clara walked straight to her father and wrapped her arms around his waist. Max waved at Elon, but even that gesture felt awkward, uncertain. Clara whispered something to Samuel, shooting Elon a sideways glance. Whatever she said made Samuel smirk. Back at Samuel's townhouse, Clara vented over dinner. "He's always trying so hard. It's weird. Like, why does he talk about robots all the time? Max thinks it's cool, but it's just, ugh." Samuel listened, nodding with parental precision. "He doesn't get how we do things," Clara added. "He's not like us." Samuel gently corrected her. "He's not part of our family." "That's all right. Your mother made a decision. We just work around it." Clara seemed satisfied with that, unaware how those words would echo later. Meanwhile, Melissa tried to clean up the mess at home. "Elon," she said, "you forgot Max's lunch." "I brought him into the world of creative problem-solving," Elon answered, pacing the kitchen. "Is that so bad?" "He's 6. Fair." Melissa leaned against the counter. "Sam's never going to like you. You know that, right?" "Noted. But I'm not doing this for Sam." "Then why?" Elon paused. "Because you matter. And your kids matter. And I know I'm not great at this yet, but I want to be." Later that night, Elon sat on the living room floor with Max, surrounded by Lego parts. They were building a makeshift Mars rover. Max's imagination ran wild. "Can we put lasers on it? And a robot arm? And rockets?" "Sure," Elon said. "Every rover needs an escape plan." Mox left. That sound, it was small, but it meant everything. Upstairs, Clara watched from the hallway, unseen. Her arms crossed, her face unreadable. The next weekend, Elon tried again. He showed up early. He remembered the lunches. He even tied Max's shoes correctly on the first try. But as he walked the kids to Samuel's car, the air turned cold. "Nice of you to be on time today," Samuel said. Elon nodded, resisting the urge to snap back. Clara got in the car without looking at him. Samuel leaned in slightly. "You're not going to win her over with science projects and charm, Musk. That girl's loyalty isn't for sale." "I'm not trying to buy it," Elon replied calmly. "I'm just showing up." Samuel stared at him for a beat, then closed the door without a word. In the rear-view mirror, as the car pulled away, Clara finally looked back. For a second, it was something. Every family starts with a fault line. Sometimes the people who stick around aren't the ones who began the journey, but the ones who decided to stay through the turbulence. This is just the beginning of Elon Musk's most human endeavor yet. Not a rocket, not a car, a family. If this chapter hit you in the heart, go ahead and give it a tap. You know which one. And if you want to see how far this family will go, stick around. Hit that subscribe button like you mean it. This story's just getting started. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's after 7 p.m. No dessert unless homework is done. And bedtime is firm. 8:30 for Max, 9:30 for Clara, Samuel said, handing Elon a printed schedule that looked like it belonged in an ICU, not a family home. Elon blinked at the chart, color-coded, with bullet points. Footnotes. Actual footnotes. "Got it," Elon replied, nodding, too fast, too confident. Samuel stared at him with the precise stillness of a man who wasn't convinced. Consistency is everything. If they sense chaos, they'll push. Especially Clara. "I lead a rocket company, Sam. I think I can manage a bedtime." Samuel raised an eyebrow, handed over the folder, and walked out without another word. The first 2 days went okay. Elon stuck the schedule to the fridge with SpaceX magnets and tried to follow it like it was a launch countdown. He set alarms, timed snack breaks, even tried to help Clara with math homework until she rolled her eyes so hard he thought she might sprain something. Mox was eager. Elon taught him how to make a potato-powered LED and let him name it Sputnik. Then came Sunday. They were at the botanical gardens just outside Austin. Melissa had a court deposition to prepare, and Elon volunteered to take the kids for the afternoon. He even packed homemade sandwiches, or at least store-bought ones wrapped in foil, which he figured counted. It was all going surprisingly well. Clara was quiet but walking nearby. Max was hopping along the stone path like a little astronaut exploring a new planet. Then, without warning, he was gone. "Mox," Elon called out, calmly at first. "Mox." He scanned the rows of hedges, heart pounding. Clara spun around, instantly alert. "What happened?" she snapped. I was just taking a picture of that butterfly, and he was right here." Clara took off running toward the butterfly garden. Elon dashed in the opposite direction, weaving through a crowd of tourists. For 3 full minutes, Max was missing. When Elon finally found him, he was sitting on the ground near a koi pond, talking to an elderly man about rocket fuel. "I told him not to go far," Max said. "I just wanted to see the fish." Elon scooped him up without a word. Clara arrived moments later, furious and breathless. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted. "You lost him." "He wasn't lost, he just—" "You're irresponsible," she snapped, storming ahead. That night, Samuel showed up to drop off Clara's backpack. Melissa answered the door. Elon stood just behind her, trying to stay invisible. "You lost Max?" Samuel asked, keeping his voice low for the kid's sake, but his eyes were blazing. "It wasn't, he wandered, but I found him in minutes," Elon said. "Minutes are forever when a child is alone," Samuel snapped. "You're not a father. Stop pretending to be." Melissa stepped between them. "Sam, please. He's doing his best." Samuel turned to her. "And that's exactly the problem. His best isn't enough." Then he left. Later that night, Elon sat in the kitchen, staring at a bowl of uneaten cereal. Clara hadn't spoken to him since they got home. Max was fine, chatting about fish and rockets like nothing happened. Melissa placed a hand on Elon's shoulder. "He didn't mean that. Sam's just scared. He sees the kids slipping out of his control." Elon gave a humorless laugh. "He's right, though. I'm not a dad. I'm not even qualified for this. Today proved it." "You didn't do anything wrong," she said softly. "You're learning." That's what matters. Elon looked at her. Do you really think I can do this? Melissa hesitated. Yes, but it's not going to be easy. You're trying to join a story that already started without you. The next day, Clara had a history project due, a slideshow about women in civil rights. Elon saw her struggling with formatting and offered to help. I'm fine, she said. I know how to do animations in Keynote. Want to see? I said I'm fine. He stepped back. She didn't even look at him again. But Max was different. At bedtime, he asked if Elon could read to him instead of Melissa. They curled up with a book about the solar system. Elon made up silly voices for each planet. Max giggled and clutched his toy rocket close. Halfway through, Max whispered, I wish you were my teacher at school. Elon blinked hard. That's really nice, Max. You're fun. Elon smiled, pulling the blanket up over him. Sleep well, buddy. Downstairs, Melissa sat at the dining table, flipping through court files. She looked up as Elon entered. He asked me to read to him, Elon said. Melissa smiled. See, I think I'm getting through to him, Elon admitted. But Clara, I don't think she wants me around at all. She's grieving, Melissa said. Not in the traditional way, but it is grief. Her world changed, and she didn't get a vote. Do you ever regret letting me in? Elon asked. She looked up sharply. Never. Meanwhile, Samuel sat in his own house, flipping through photos on his phone. Clara's science fair, Max's preschool graduation. Photos he took, moments he lived. Then he scrolled to a recent one. Elon in the background, holding Max's hand. He stared at it for a long time. Then he locked the screen. That weekend, Melissa organized a small barbecue in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just burgers, some friends, and a movie night on a bedsheet projector. Elon was on grill duty. Max ran around pretending to be a space captain. Clara sat alone reading. Melissa laughed with two friends from her firm. And Samuel arrived late. He didn't bring anything, didn't greet Elon. He just nodded to the kids and stood near the back, arms crossed. During dinner, Max sat beside Elon, clinging to his sleeve. Clara sat beside her father. It was quiet, uncomfortable. Elon handed Max a napkin. Max looked up and smiled. Thanks, Commander Musk. Samuel flinched. Elon caught it, but said nothing. That night, after the guests left and the dishes were done, Samuel stayed behind to talk to Melissa. You need to decide who's setting the rules in this house, he said. We all are, she replied. Together. That's not how this works. So, Sam, that's not how you worked. And that's exactly why we're not together anymore. Upstairs, Elon tucked Max in, then peeked into Clara's room. She was sketching something in a notebook. Need help? He asked. No, she said. He nodded, about to leave. But thanks, she added without looking up. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the wall. The tension between Elon and Samuel wasn't just a rivalry. It was a war of presence, of belonging, of legacy. And as each man tried to claim his space, the children felt every shift in the fault line. This family wasn't built on blood alone, and the battle had only just begun. Samuel Carter paused halfway out of bed, gripping the edge of the mattress with white knuckles. A tightness had wrapped itself around the left side of his chest, not like a muscle strain or fatigue. No, this was deeper. He inhaled through his nose, slow and shallow. It didn't help. He sat there, still shirtless, the morning sun stretching across the floor of his bedroom. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of his face. Dad, Max called from the hallway. Are we still going to school? Samuel wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and stood up. Yes, buddy. Just give me 2 minutes. His voice sounded normal. That was the key. Keep sounding normal. Later that day, between patient rounds and endless hospital charts, Samuel booked an MRI for himself under a pseudonym. One of the perks of working in oncology was knowing how to keep things quiet when you needed to, especially when you didn't want your ex-wife or your children or anyone really to know something was wrong. Because something was wrong. You already knew it. The scan would only confirm what his instincts, his body, and his nightmares had whispered for weeks. At home, Elon Musk was trying again to talk to Clara. "Hey, I've been working on a new AI interface. You think it would help with your science presentation? It can even animate diagrams." Clara didn't look up from her phone. "I already did it." "Oh, well, cool. If you want me to look it over." "I don't." Elon swallowed. "Okay, got it." She didn't hate him. That would be easier. She simply regarded him like she would a substitute teacher who tried too hard. One she knew wouldn't last. The next afternoon, Samuel arrived early at the school to drop off Max's art supplies. The receptionist waved him in. He was a familiar face. On his way to the classroom, he passed the open doors of the science lab and stopped. Inside, Elon was crouched beside Max, who was building a model volcano out of cardboard and clay. Max's face lit up as Elon carefully poured baking soda into a small container and whispered something about simulated Martian eruptions. The volcano fizzled, erupted in orange-tinted foam, and Max laughed so loud the whole room turned. Samuel didn't enter. He just stood in the hallway, hidden, watching. 2 hours later, the test results arrived. The cancer was back. Aggressive. Inoperable. Likely metastatic. Dr. Samuel Carter, who had spent his life delivering these exact conversations to strangers, sat in a hospital lounge alone, staring at his own scan. The irony wasn't lost on him. All the precision in the world couldn't shield you from the chaos inside your own body. He thought of Max's laugh. He thought of Clara's defiance. He thought of Elon's hands covered in volcano clay. Samuel didn't sleep much that night. He sat in the dark, typing in a locked document on his laptop, a series of thoughts, hopes, letters. One for each child. A file titled simply, "For later." He didn't tell Melissa. Not yet. And certainly not the kids. There were still things to do. Structures to hold in place. People to protect. Meanwhile, Elon was setting up an old film camera in the living room. Not for anything fancy, just for a personal project. Moments of transition, he called it. He captured Clara sitting on the stairs, sketching in her notebook. Max dancing with his stuffed dragon. Melissa, barefoot in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through a case file. He showed the prints later that week. Melissa was touched. Max grinned. But Clara, they look fake, she said flatly, shoving the stack of photos back across the table. What do you mean? Elon asked, confused. They look like you're trying to make us something we're not. Then she walked out of the room. Samuel was there. He hadn't said a word through the whole exchange. He just watched, leaning against the hallway wall. Elon saw the look in his eyes. Pity? No. Judgment? Maybe. Distance. That's what it was. Samuel was already beginning to retreat. Later that evening, Melissa leaned against the door frame of Samuel's study while he sorted medical files. You look tired, she said. He didn't look up. Long week. Even for you. I'm fine. Samuel. He glanced at her, smiled briefly. Really, I'm okay. She didn't press. Not because she believed him, but because the alternative felt too heavy to hold. The next morning, Samuel dropped the kids off, fixed Max's collar, and told Clara to ace her spelling test. He made a joke about eating too much cafeteria pizza. Max giggled. Everything seemed normal, except it wasn't. When the car pulled away, Samuel gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Elon, in his own way, tried to tighten up the structure. He began enforcing the bedtime schedule. No more random chips before dinner. No last-minute homework. Max didn't mind. He liked rules when Elon was the one giving them, especially when they were presented like mission protocols. Clara, on the other hand, pushed harder. You're not my dad, she said one night when Elon reminded her about curfew. I know, he replied quietly, but I care about you just the same. Then stop trying to fix everything. She slammed the door behind her. That night, Samuel opened the document again. He added a new section titled When You're Angry. Then another one about Elon. He didn't know if he'd ever get to read them aloud. but the words needed to live somewhere. His children deserve guidance, even if he wouldn't be there to give it. In the silence of his study, Samuel rested his head against the back of his chair. For a moment, he allowed his body to feel everything he'd been suppressing: the fatigue, the pain, the fear. Then he straightened up and resumed typing. A father's love, he had once told a patient, isn't measured by how long it lasts, but by how well it's remembered. The gravel road crunched beneath the tires as Elon turned off the main highway, steering the Tesla into a narrow path flanked by trees and open fields. Max sat in the back seat, bouncing with anticipation, his toy rocket clutched tightly in his lap. "Is it really a real farm?" Max asked. "The realest," Elon replied, glancing in the rearview mirror. "With chickens, goats, horses. No robots." "Well, probably no robots." Mox grinned. The farm was quiet, rustic, and full of unfamiliar scents: hay, soil, animals, and something sweet like warm feed. Elon crouched beside Max at the petting pen, holding out a handful of grain for a bleeding goat. Max giggled when the goat licked his fingers. "Feels like sandpaper," he laughed. Elon laughed with him genuinely. Not the kind of laugh he used at press conferences or investor meetings. This one came from somewhere more private. Watching Max beam with wonder, he felt, for a moment, like he belonged to something bigger than the things he built. Later, while Melissa scrolled through photos Elon had texted her, Max laughing beside a donkey, Max petting a pony, Samuel sat across from her on the sofa, waiting for the kids to come home. She didn't notice at first that he was looking. "What's that?" Samuel asked, trying to sound casual. "Photos from today." Elon took Max to a little farm out by Dripping Springs. Samuel leaned in slightly, his eyes fixed on one image, Max holding up a chicken like a trophy, with Elon crouched beside him, both of them mid-laugh. Samuel's smile was faint and complicated. That night, in the dim light of his home office, Samuel opened his laptop and stared at the most recent pet scan again. The irregular shadows that told a quiet, relentless truth. He didn't even flinch this time. He just let out a breath and clicked it closed. He walked into the break room at the hospital the next morning and found Dr. Yvonne Tran, an old colleague from med school, making coffee. "You look like hell," she said flatly. Samuel chuckled without humor. "I've had better weeks." He poured himself some coffee and sat beside her, hesitating. Then, for the first time in weeks, he said it out loud. "It's back. Stage 4. Yvonne's eyes widened for a moment before narrowing with understanding. "Jesus, Sam. I'm so sorry. I haven't told the kids. Or Melissa. Or anyone but you." "Why?" Samuel looked into his coffee. "Because I don't know how to say goodbye without blowing their world apart." Meanwhile, in the Carter house, Clara walked into the living room wearing a dark green hoodie and new jeans. Elon looked up from his laptop, blinking. "Hey, that looks great on you." She froze. "You bought this, didn't you?" Melissa picked it out. "I just paid for it." Clara tugged at the sleeve like it itched. "I didn't ask for your help." And with that, she stormed upstairs. A few days later, Melissa was juggling work emails and lunchboxes when Elon stepped into the kitchen. "I saw the flyer for Max's science fair. I could help, maybe design a cool visual with him. Just an idea." Melissa hesitated. "Samuel will probably handle it, but I'll check." She did. Samuel was, as expected, reluctant. "He'll just turn it into a pitch for Mars colonization," he said when Melissa brought it up. "He's trying, Sam. Max likes working with him." Samuel sighed. "Fine, but no lasers. Or drones." Melissa smiled. "No drones. Got it." That Saturday, as they prepped Max's volcano display together, Melissa leaned into Elon's side and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "You're good at this," she whispered. He turned slightly, kissed her temple. Neither of them noticed Clara, standing in the hallway, watching. Her eyes narrowed. She turned and left without a word. Samuel picked Clara up from art class that afternoon. She was quiet on the drive. "You okay?" he asked. She shrugged. He waited. Finally, she muttered, they were hugging. Samuel glanced at her. "Who?" "Mom. And him." He didn't answer right away, just let the silence stretch between them. "Does it bother you?" he asked gently. Clara didn't answer. She just pressed her forehead against the window. That night, Samuel sat alone with an old shoebox in his lap. Inside were faded Polaroids, Clara with chocolate on her face, Max as a baby in a dinosaur onesie, Melissa holding them both on a sunlit picnic blanket. His hands shook slightly as he picked up one of the photos. The memories felt suspended in amber, untouched by the time that now raced against him. He knew the children needed a path forward, one where love didn't vanish just because he would. He would have to find a way to help them cross the bridge before it collapsed. Back at the house, Elon was outside alone, tightening screws on the fold-out legs of Max's project board. His breath fogged faintly in the cool air. Melissa joined him with a cup of tea. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Clara won't let me in. Samuel barely tolerates me. And I'm supposed to pretend this all makes sense?" "It doesn't have to make sense right away," she said. "You just have to keep showing up." Elon looked at her. "Do you think they'll ever let me be part of the story?" "They already have," Melissa said. "They just don't know how to say it yet." Inside, Clara sat in her room, knees pulled to her chest, sketching furiously in her notebook. On the page was a rough drawing of her family, Mom, Dad, Max, and Elon off to the side, half erased. She stared at it for a long time, then slowly began redrawing him. Not in the center, not quite apart, just there, trying. And somewhere in the quiet of his own living room, Samuel picked up a pen and began a new entry in his hidden journal. "If I can't be there to protect them, let someone good stand in the gap." He paused. "Let them know I love them enough to let go." Then he folded the photo of Max and Elon at the farm, slipped it inside the journal, and closed it carefully. Samuel stood in the kitchen, staring at the white marble countertop as if it might give him the courage he couldn't find inside himself. His hand gripped the edge of the counter, the pressure grounded him. Behind him, Melissa was unpacking groceries, humming softly. "Melissa," he said, his voice lower than usual. She paused, holding a bag of apples, and looked at him. Something in his tone froze her mid-movement. "I saw my oncologist yesterday." Her body went still. Slowly, she set the bag down. "It's back," Samuel said. "Lungs, liver, stage 4. It's terminal." For a long moment, Melissa said nothing. Her fingers tightened slightly around the countertop. Then, as if compelled by muscle memory, she moved toward him. "There has to be." "No," he cut in gently. "We're out of options. Palliative only." She sank into a chair. Her breath came out in one long, trembling exhale. "How long?" "A few months. Maybe less. Maybe a little more." She pressed a hand to her mouth. When she looked at him, her amber hazel eyes were glossy but dry. "And the kids?" "Not yet," Samuel said quickly. "Please, let me have a little more time. I don't want them to carry this yet." Melissa nodded slowly, her mind spiraling in 1,000 directions. In the following days, Elon noticed the shift. It wasn't one thing, it was everything. The way Melissa lingered in silence after phone calls. The long stares out the window. The way Samuel had stopped correcting Max's messy shoelaces or reminding Clara to label her folders. He was still present, but the sharp edges were gone. And that somehow was worse. One evening, Elon found Samuel sitting alone on the back patio, wrapped in a light jacket, staring out at the yard. "I brought you tea," Elon said, holding a mug. Samuel didn't respond right away. Then, he gestured for Elon to sit beside him. "You already know, don't you?" Samuel said after a long silence. Elon nodded once. "Not officially, but I can tell." Samuel glanced at him, as if weighing something. "It's terminal. Melissa knows. The kids don't." Elon sat back, his throat tight. "Jesus, Sam. I'm sorry." Samuel took the tea from his hands and cradled it without drinking. "I hated you at first, you know." "I figured," Elon said quietly. "Still do. Some days." Samuel smiled bitterly. but you're trying. I see that now. Elon exhaled slowly. I don't want to take anything from you. I want to be what they need. Samuel looked straight ahead. That's what scares me, that you might be. The next morning, Melissa and Samuel stood in the hallway while the kids played upstairs. The house felt too quiet. We can't avoid it forever, Melissa said. They're starting to notice. I know, Samuel said, but let's wait until after Max's science fair. Let him have that. She nodded, biting her lip. At that moment, Max's voice echoed from above. Mom, do volcanoes make noise when they explode? Samuel called back, only if they're angry. Max laughed and went back to building. Later that day, Max wandered into Samuel's room. He climbed onto the bed, curling beside him. Are you sad, Dad? Samuel blinked. What makes you say that? You're quieter now. You don't laugh as much. Samuel forced a smile. Just tired. That's all. Max nodded solemnly. Okay. Then, after a beat, will you still come to my volcano thing? Wouldn't miss it for the world. Meanwhile, Elon came home early one evening to find the house oddly still. He stepped into the hallway and heard something, soft, broken. Following the sound, he stopped at Samuel's partially open study door. Inside, Samuel sat slumped at his desk, head in his hands, silent tears rolling down his face. Elon didn't knock. He didn't enter. He just stood there, unseen, heart heavy, then quietly walked away. That night, Clara sat in the stairwell after lights out, sketchbook in hand. From below, voices floated up, low, urgent. He's not getting better, Melissa whispered. I know. I just don't want to scare them too early. Clara's pencil froze midline. She heard Elon's voice next, calmer, careful. You don't have to do this alone, Mel. And then silence. Clara closed her notebook slowly. Her heart pounded, a cold awareness beginning to settle. The next day, Samuel locked himself in his study and began to record. He sat in front of his webcam, wearing a navy sweater, his eyes sunken but sharp. Clara, he said, looking directly into the lens. If you're watching this, it means I'm not there to tell you all the things I wish I could. So here they are. He paused, swallowing. I'm proud of you. You're strong and stubborn and brilliant. Please don't carry too much of this world on your shoulders. Let others help. Let yourself rest. He stopped the recording, saved it, then opened another. Max, my explorer, my rocket boy. That night, the air in the house felt heavier, thicker, somehow, as if every wall had started to absorb the weight of what was coming. Nobody spoke it aloud, but the truth had started to seep in. It was in the way Clara watched Samuel from across the table, in the way Max checked his father's face before asking a question, in the way Melissa stood a little longer in doorways, staring after her children with something close to dread. And Elon moved through the house like a man between worlds. Present but not fully welcome. Necessary but not yet accepted. Still he stayed, because now, more than ever, presence mattered. Even when the truth remained unspoken. Even when the weight of goodbye was already in the room. The needle pierced the soft edge of the felt cape, pulling a thread that looped through the fabric with patient precision. Samuel sat at the dining table, surrounded by scraps of fabric, glitter glue, and half-sewn stars. Max's school play, a space-themed production, was in 3 days, and his character was Captain Nebula, a heroic astronaut in search of a lost moon. The school had asked parents to contribute costumes. Samuel insisted on making Max's himself. He moved slower than he once did, the tremble in his left hand making each stitch an act of will. Still, he worked quietly, intently, the table lamp casting long shadows over his slumped shoulders. Elon entered the room, holding a roll of metallic fabric. I thought this might work for the sleeves. Sort of galactic armor. Samuel didn't look up. We're keeping it simple. Max peeked in behind Elon. That looks cool. Clara, standing at the kitchen island, rolled her eyes. He doesn't even know how the play works. Elon paused. Maybe you could tell me? Clara's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't understand anyway. Samuel's glance flicked toward her, not harsh, but firm. Clara dropped her gaze and busied herself with her cereal. Later that evening, after Max had tried on the finished cape and spun in circles of delight, he tackled his father with a hug. "You're the best, Dad. My best friend." Samuel closed his eyes briefly and smiled, wrapping his arms around Max with care, as if the boy were made of glass and time. In the days that followed, Clara began to watch her father more closely. She noticed how he winced when bending over, how he stopped mid-sentence to catch his breath, how he sat longer than usual at the table after meals, eyes unfocused, body heavy. Melissa noticed too. One afternoon, she insisted on driving him to the hospital. He didn't argue this time. The oncologist was kind, but the verdict was sharp. The tumor progression had accelerated. Chemotherapy was still possible, but its effect would be minimal. Weeks perhaps. A few months at most. Melissa sat beside Samuel in the hospital room, gripping the armrest instead of his hand. She stared straight ahead, blinking too fast. He nodded once quietly. Then let's not waste time pretending. That evening, Samuel sat in a lounge chair in the backyard, a blanket over his legs and a warm cup of tea in hand. The sun was setting in slow gold and orange streaks, melting behind the fence. He stared into it without blinking, as if daring it to disappear before him. He thought about his childhood, about medical school, about holding Clara for the first time, about Max's laugh. Mostly, he thought about what they'd remember. In an attempt to offer something that might bridge the growing gap, Elon gave Clara a gift, a refurbished analog camera with a worn leather strap. A real one, a 35mm Canon A, one with a roll of unused film. "I thought you'd like it," he said, placing it on the coffee table beside her sketch pad. "You have a good eye." Clara didn't even touch it. "You're not my dad," she said coldly. "You don't get to give me important things." Elon opened his mouth, then closed it. She picked up the camera, walked into her room, and shut the door behind her. Later that night, Samuel found Clara sitting on the floor, knees to her chest, the camera beside her. "She doesn't know anything about me," she muttered. Samuel sat beside her slowly, wincing as he lowered himself. "He's not trying to replace me," he said, "even if it feels that way." Clara looked at him, her face scrunched with confusion and tears. "Then why does he keep acting like this is his family now?" Samuel swallowed hard, smoothing her hair back gently. "Because he loves your mom. And because in his own awkward way, he loves you and Max too. That's not stealing anything from us. That's something else. Something we might need someday." He didn't tell her the truth, not all of it, but part of it was there, hovering just beneath his voice. In the kitchen the next morning, Melissa stood across from Elon. "You gave her the camera. I thought it might help. I didn't mean to overstep." Melissa nodded. "I know, but right now, she's grieving, even if she doesn't know why." They stood in silence for a beat. "We have to start thinking about how to help them carry what's coming," Melissa said, "not shield them from it." Chemotherapy started the following week. Samuel didn't tell the kids. Not yet. He insisted on keeping the explanation vague, just a procedure. But the effects were immediate. By day 3, he'd lost his appetite. By day 5, the first clumps of hair appeared on his pillow. By day 7, he was wearing a simple navy baseball cap to hide the thinning. He still tried to drive Max to school, still helped Clara with vocabulary words, still folded his own laundry despite Melissa begging him to rest. One afternoon, Elon came by to fix a leak under the bathroom sink. As he turned the corner of the hallway, he saw Samuel stumbling out of the shower, gripping the doorframe for balance. His back was hunched, his breath shallow. They locked eyes. Elon said nothing. He simply reached out, steadying Samuel by the arm, and waited until he could walk again. No words were spoken. No pride needed defending. It was the first moment they had shared that had nothing to do with the past, or the children, or who belonged where. Just one man helping another stay on his feet. Samuel nodded once, faintly. Elon nodded back. And for the first time, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, Not friendship, but a mutual respect forged quietly in the soft edges of pain. Samuel sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his eyes unfocused. The morning light cut across the room in pale stripes, outlining the stillness in the air. Melissa stood by the door, silent, waiting. The moment they had dreaded was no longer avoidable. Downstairs, Clara and Max were eating breakfast, Max humming between spoonfuls of cereal, Clara scrolling through her phone with a disinterested scowl. Everything looked normal, ordinary. It wouldn't be for long. He gathered the kids in the living room, his voice soft but firm. Max hopped onto the couch, feet not quite touching the floor. Clara sat cross-armed, already suspicious of the sudden family talk. Samuel didn't stall. "I've been sick for a while," he began, watching their faces. "And recently I found out the sickness has gotten worse." Max blinked, confused. "Like a cold?" Clara frowned. "What kind of sick?" Melissa moved closer, placing a hand on Samuel's shoulder. He inhaled. "I have cancer," he said, "and it's not something the doctors can fix anymore." Max's lip trembled. He looked at Melissa, then back at his dad. "But you're still going to get better, right?" Samuel shook his head gently. "No, buddy, not this time." Max leaned into Melissa and burst into tears. Clara stood abruptly. "This is a joke. You just said you had more time." Her voice cracked. "You're not dying." Samuel stood too, reaching for her. "Clara." "No," she snapped, stepping back. "You said we'd be fine." She turned and bolted up the stairs, slamming her bedroom door. Elon had been standing just outside the living room, partially hidden, listening. He remained still, his chest tight, hands at his sides. This wasn't his moment, but it was his reality, too. Clara stayed locked in her room the rest of the day. Melissa tried knocking once, no answer. Max played quietly with his toys in the living room, occasionally glancing at the stairs. The house, usually full of subtle motion and overlapping sounds, was now split by a wall of silence. Samuel tried to carry on as if it were a normal day. He helped Max pack his school bag. He folded Clara's hoodie and left it outside her door. He even sat with Elon briefly in the kitchen, sipping tea, not speaking. That evening, Max curled beside Samuel on the couch. His voice was small. "Dad, when people die, where do they go?" Samuel smiled faintly and smoothed Max's hair. "Some people think they go to heaven. Others say they become stars. Or memories." Max nodded slowly. "Will I still remember you when I'm old?" "I think you'll remember me always," Samuel said, "because I'll always be in here." He tapped Max's chest gently. Max didn't cry. He just leaned in closer, letting his father hold him like a shield against the world. Melissa and Elon did their best to fill the space around Samuel's illness with small comforts. Warm meals, shared chores, constant presence. One afternoon, as Melissa folded laundry, Clara stormed in. Her eyes were red. "Why is he still here?" she snapped, pointing toward the backyard where Elon was helping Max build a cardboard rocket. Melissa froze. "Clara, it's his fault. Ever since he came into this house, everything's falling apart." "That's not true." Clara's voice cracked. "He wants to be dad, but he's not." Melissa set the laundry down. "He doesn't want to replace your father, Clara. He's just trying to help hold us together." Clara turned away, trembling. Elon had heard everything from the porch. Still, he didn't come in. He sat quietly beside Max, handing him a roll of duct tape. That night, Samuel found Elon sitting alone on the back steps. "She's not wrong," Elon said before Samuel could speak. "I walked into their lives at the worst possible moment." Samuel exhaled. "You didn't choose this timing, Elon." "Neither did I." He looked out at the night sky. "She's grieving, before anything's even happened. That's the cruel part." Elon nodded. "And I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," Samuel said. "You just keep showing up." A few days later, Samuel invited Elon to join him and the kids for a walk in the park. Melissa gently encouraged Clara, who agreed, reluctantly. They walked in pairs, Max skipping ahead with a stick in his hand, pretending it was a space sword. Clara trailed behind, earbuds in, arms crossed. Samuel and Elon walked side by side slowly. No one said much, but no one fought either. When Max tugged on Elon's sleeve to show him a butterfly landing on a leaf, Clara glanced over. For the first time, her expression wasn't hostile, it was curious. Tentative. That evening, Samuel sat on the porch swing with Melissa, wrapped in a blanket. His hands trembled slightly as he sipped tea. Today felt different, he murmured. Better, she asked. Just quieter. He looked out at the dusk sky. It's close, he said. I can feel it. Melissa gripped his hand. Then we'll make what's left matter. He nodded, eyes shining. The days that followed took on a strange rhythm, a mix of impending grief and fragile joy. Samuel slept more, but when he was awake, he was present. He helped Max rehearse his lines for the school play. He asked Clara about her sketchbook, even when she only shrugged. Elon kept his distance when needed, stepped forward when asked. He became a quiet constant, not a replacement, not an intruder, but something else entirely. They were no longer living in denial. They were living in preparation. Beginnings and endings were now intertwined, like vines climbing the same wall. And in that delicate, temporary in-between, they found something resembling peace. The living room floor was covered in glitter, scraps of colored felt, cardboard stars, and tangled pieces of string. Max stood in the center of it all, wearing a silver cape that barely stayed on his shoulders, practicing his lines with the kind of earnest commitment only a 6-year-old could summon. Elon, Max called out, his voice small but proud. Do I sound like a real astronaut? Elon looked up from the hot glue gun, his eyes warm behind a slightly amused smile. You sound like the captain of the whole galaxy, buddy. Max grinned and spun in circles, the cape fluttering like solar panels in a solar storm. At the kitchen table, Samuel sat with a warm cup of tea, the steam rising unnoticed. He looked paler than usual, his cheeks hollow, his shoulders thinner beneath a loose sweater, but his eyes stayed locked on Max, tired, yes, but determined. I'm going, Samuel said aloud suddenly, as if answering a question no one had asked. Melissa, preparing a tray of orange slices, turned slowly. To the school. Samuel nodded. To his play. I'm not missing it. Elon and I can record it if... I said I'm going. His voice was quiet but resolute. Melissa exchanged a glance with Elon. No one argued. Over the next 2 days, Elon immersed himself in Max's preparations. He helped fine-tune the music cue Max needed for his entrance, reinforcing the timing with a gentle clap from the sidelines. He sewed, badly, a replacement moon patch for Max's costume. He even offered to edit a slideshow of the space-themed drawings Max had made during rehearsals. On the third night, as Elon was pinning a crooked star to Max's cardboard helmet, Samuel entered the room slowly. He stood for a moment, watching the interaction. There was no jealousy this time, no suspicion, just gratitude. Hey, Samuel said softly. Elon turned. Samuel cleared his throat, then said, thanks, for helping him and for sticking around. Elon nodded, surprised by the sincerity. He's a pretty amazing kid. Samuel cracked a weary smile. Yeah, he is. The house was quieter than usual the next morning. Clara hadn't come down for breakfast. Melissa assumed she was just slow to wake up, but when she passed by Clara's room, the door was ajar and Clara wasn't there. She found her a few minutes later, tucked behind the door of Samuel's study, knees pulled up to her chest, crumpled letter in her hands. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, trying to control the sobs. Melissa didn't ask questions. She simply knelt beside her daughter and held her. Later that evening, Clara sat alone on the staircase, staring at nothing. Elon approached quietly, keeping a respectful distance as he sat a few steps below her. He didn't speak at first, just sat there, letting silence fill the air between them. Finally, he said, when I was about your age, my dad told me he was moving to a different city for work. I thought he'd come back, but he never did. Clara blinked, looking down at her knees. I used to think I didn't need him, Elon continued. And I told myself that for a long time. But the truth is, I did. And it hurt. She didn't interrupt. She didn't leave. That in itself was a breakthrough. I don't want to take your dad's place, Elon added, voice quiet. No one ever could. I just want you to know that I'll be here. However you need me, or don't need me, I'm still here. Clara's chin trembled, but she didn't speak. She just nodded barely but enough. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Samuel sat outside on the back porch with Elon. The cool air brushed gently across their faces, and the stars hung low and bright above them. I thought I'd have more time, Samuel said. Elon didn't respond. He knew there was more. I wanted to teach Max how to throw a proper spiral. I wanted to see Clara graduate middle school. His voice cracked. I wanted to be the one who stays. Elon looked down. I can't imagine what that feels like. Samuel took a long breath. I'm scared they'll forget me. Or worse, that they won't need me at all. Elon swallowed hard. They won't forget you. Samuel turned to him, his expression softening. Promise me you'll be patient with Clara. She loves hard, but it takes her a while to show it. I promise, Elon said. And with Max, don't overcomplicate things. He doesn't need grand gestures, just presence. Elon nodded again. I understand. A silence fell between them, heavy but peaceful. You know, Samuel added, eyes on the stars, you're doing better than I expected. I still don't know what I'm doing most of the time. None of us do, Samuel said with a faint smile. But you care, and that's the hardest part. They sat like that for a while, two men who had started out as opposites, now bound by a shared love for two young souls. Melissa stood just inside the door, watching the scene unfold. Her heart ached with gratitude and sorrow. Gratitude for this moment of connection, sorrow for the fragile thread of time they had left. The next morning, something subtle had shifted. The air in the house was less tense. Max ran through the hallway wearing his cape, yelling lines from the play. Clara didn't retreat to her room. She lingered by the kitchen, listening as Elon told a joke that made Max laugh so hard he spilled his orange juice. Later, Samuel sat with Clara in the living room. He handed her a second letter. This one's for later, he said, when I'm not around to answer your hard questions. Clara looked at him with teary eyes. You'll still be with us, right? Samuel pulled her in gently. Always. And in that moment, she believed him. The gymnasium buzzed with energy. Folding chairs lined the makeshift stage. Parents jockeyed for good seats, some already waving phone cameras in anticipation. The faint smell of fresh paint and cafeteria food lingered, but tonight, the school auditorium in Austin, Texas, was a cathedral of love and light. Backstage, Elon Musk crouched beside Max, adjusting the boy's moon-shaped belt made of cardboard and glitter glue. Max bounced on his toes in excitement, his silver cape swaying behind him. Is my helmet crooked again? Max asked, tugging at the papier-mâché dome on his head. Not anymore, Elon replied, gently nudging it straight. You're ready, Captain. From behind them, Clara appeared, holding her own costume bag. She hesitated for a beat, then stepped closer. Her chestnut hair framed her face in soft waves, her barrettes slightly uneven. Elon, she said almost in a whisper. He looked up, surprised but attentive. Good luck out there, Clara said, managing a small smile. Elon paused, heart thumping. Thanks, Clara. That means a lot. She nodded, then turned and walked off toward her classmates, the smile lingering. It wasn't just good luck. It was her first gesture of peace. Across the parking lot, Samuel Carter gripped Melissa's arm as he stepped carefully out of the car. The wind was gentle, but he braced as though it might knock him over. Beneath his beige overcoat, his sweater hung loose on his thinning frame. A navy baseball cap covered the scalp where hair used to be thick and glossy. His legs trembled slightly as he walked, but his eyes were sharp with purpose. I can do this, he said before Melissa could offer help again. I know you can, she whispered, squeezing his hand. Inside, the auditorium was almost full. The chatter of families and students filled the room like waves crashing on a beach. Samuel and Melissa found their seats near the front, where Elon had saved them a spot with coats. Samuel eased down slowly, letting out a breath as he settled in. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. Max stepped onto the stage in a silver jumpsuit that shimmered in the spotlight. His blue eyes scanned the crowd until he found them. Samuel, Melissa, Elon, and Clara, all beaming up at him from the front row. He launched into his lines with the confidence of a seasoned actor, his little voice filling the room with clarity and joy. "I am Commander Max of the Space Rangers, and I believe in dreams." The audience erupted in applause. Laughter bubbled from parents as Max spun with exaggerated drama and saluted the audience. In the front row, Samuel leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder, pride swelling visibly in his chest. Elon clapped with restrained enthusiasm, recording a few quiet seconds on his phone before lowering it to simply watch. When Max finished, the room exploded in cheers. Samuel wiped at his eye discreetly. Melissa didn't bother hiding hers. The stage darkened. A single spotlight returned, this time revealing Clara standing center stage, microphone in hand. She wore a pale blue dress and a solemn expression. The first piano notes of her song began, simple, slow. She opened her mouth and sang. It wasn't perfect. Her voice wavered, cracked once. But the emotion behind every note hit like a tidal wave. "This song is for my dad," she said softly midway through. "Because even when I'm scared, you make me brave." Samuel's breath caught. His fingers dug into his knees as his lungs struggled against the weight in his chest. Tears welled at his eyes as he fought to breathe evenly. Melissa reached for his hand. Elon sat still, the camera resting on his lap, unused. He knew the moment wasn't his to capture, it was his to witness. When the song ended, silence blanketed the gym for a heartbeat. Then applause burst forward, standing ovation, loud and full. Clara bowed quickly, then ran off stage, tears just beginning to stream down her cheeks. Samuel stood slowly. Every motion required effort, but he turned to Elon, eyes glassy, and gave him a single, solemn nod, more than gratitude. It was acceptance, trust. Elon returned the nod with quiet humility. After the show, students poured into the lobby, where tables of juice boxes and cookies were laid out. The gym echoed with laughter and parents' congratulations. Max zipped around, proudly retelling parts of the play to anyone who'd listen. "I did the spin, just like we practiced," he told Samuel, hugging his dad's leg. Samuel smiled, resting a hand gently on Max's back. "You were incredible." Clara lingered near the edge of the crowd, arms folded, until she caught sight of Elon standing alone near a hallway. She approached slowly. He noticed her just as she stopped in front of him. "I saw you didn't record the song," she said. "I didn't want to ruin the moment," he replied honestly. Clara looked up at him. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his waist. Elon froze, then knelt quickly, returning the hug with care. Her face buried against his shoulder, warm tears soaking through his hoodie. Melissa, watching from across the room, blinked back her own tears. She leaned against Samuel's shoulder, overwhelmed by what had just unfolded. "I think," Samuel said quietly, "they'll be okay." Melissa nodded, her heart aching in agreement. Later that night, as Samuel changed into pajamas at home with Melissa's help, he stood briefly in front of the bathroom mirror. He looked at himself, the sunken cheeks, the cap covering what little hair remained, the faded lines of a man once stronger. And then he thought of Max in his silver cape, of Clara's trembling voice, of Elon's steady hands and quiet eyes. A rare smile curled on his lips. He was still afraid. The future remained uncertain. But he knew something now, etched deep in the marrow of his fading strength. He was leaving his children in good hands. The dining table had become Samuel's workstation. Not for medical files, not for bills or school forms, but for something far more sacred now, memories. Spread across the surface were dozens of photographs, many faded around the edges, some recent prints still smelling faintly of developer fluid. A thick scrapbook lay open in front of him, its pages blank, waiting to be filled. Samuel Carter, frilier now than he'd ever imagined he could be, sat bundled in a wool cardigan, his legs covered with a blanket. His hands trembled occasionally, but his focus remained sharp as he picked up one photo after another. In one, Clara was 4, wearing a makeshift crown and holding a stuffed tiger upside down. In another, Max sat inside a cardboard box labeled Spaceship, eyes wide with wonder. Samuel smiled at the image. He flipped it over and scribbled on the back in careful block letters, "First mission to Mars, Max, age 3. He paused to rest. Elon had seen Samuel at the table every day that week, sometimes working in silence, sometimes humming an old melody under his breath. One evening, Elon approached with an envelope. "I thought these might be useful," he said, holding it out. Samuel opened it carefully. Inside were candid shots, one Samuel didn't know existed. Clara laughing with her mouth full of cake, Max asleep on Elon's shoulder during a backyard barbecue, Melissa brushing Clara's hair as the sun set behind them. "I didn't mean to intrude," Elon added. "I just thought you'd want them." Samuel looked up. His expression was tired but genuine. "These are beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." Later that afternoon, Clara wandered into the dining room, her sketch pad under her arm. She stopped when she saw the photos, drawn to them like a moth to flame. Samuel patted the chair beside him. "Want to help?" She sat down, her fingers tracing the glossy surface of a photo. "That's me on my first bike," she whispered. Samuel handed her a pen. "Write what you remember." Clara took the pen slowly. Then, beneath the photo, she scribbled, "Mom let go too early. I crashed into a rose bush. Dad laughed until he cried." They both smiled. Max arrived minutes later with crayons and a bag of animal crackers. He didn't ask to help. He just pulled up a chair and began drawing. Next to a photo of Clara's dance recital, he added a stick figure with a cape labeled Supersis. By a family vacation snapshot, he sketched a giant octopus and said, "That's what I thought was under the boat." The pages came alive, not just with pictures, but with feeling, with voice, with the chaos and color of a real life. That evening, while the house was quiet, Samuel retreated to his room with a small digital recorder. He held it carefully, thumb hovering over the red button. "Message for Clara," he said into the mic. "You're probably taller than your mom by now. Maybe stronger too, though don't tell her I said that." His voice cracked. He tried again. "For Max. If you're listening to this on your birthday, then you're probably taller than the kitchen counter. I bet you're still dreaming about rockets." He recorded late into the night. Messages for birthdays, for graduations, for rainy days when they might miss him more than usual. Over the next few days, he wrote letters too. Short ones and long ones. Some serious, some silly. One for Clara on her high school graduation. One for Max when he loses his first tooth. One just titled, "Open When You're Scared." Melissa found him once, asleep in the chair, pen still in hand, letter resting gently on his chest. She didn't wake him. She just kissed his forehead and tiptoed out. That night, Elon passed by Samuel's room and paused. Through the slightly ajar door, he heard the unmistakable sound of someone trying not to cry. He hesitated, then knocked softly and stepped in. Samuel didn't look up. He sat on the bed, shoulders hunched, photo album resting on his lap. "I'm fine," he said hoarsely, wiping his face. "You don't have to be," Elon replied. After a long pause, Elon sat down beside him, not speaking. Samuel reached for a tissue, then shook his head. "I'm not afraid to die," he said quietly. "But I am afraid that I'll be erased, that they'll forget the sound of my voice, that someday Max won't remember what it felt like to sit on my shoulders, that Clara will forget I used to know every word to her favorite bedtime book." Elon looked down at his hands. "They won't forget you, Sam. You can't know that." "I can," Elon said, "because I won't let them." Samuel turned, surprised by the firmness in his voice. They'll see you in every drawing Max makes. In every fight Clara wins with her own stubbornness. In the way Melissa keeps the light on in the kitchen, even after everyone's gone to bed. And I'll make sure they know who taught them to be brave, to love, to laugh. Samuel's eyes shimmered, and for once, he didn't fight the tears. He reached out and grasped Elon's hand. It wasn't a handshake, it was a pact. The next morning, the album lay finished on the nightstand beside Samuel's bed. The cover was cloth-bound with our story etched in gold across the front. Inside, there were photos of birthdays and bruises, Christmases, and camping trips. Notes in Max's wobbly handwriting. Sketches by Clara. Elon's candid prints. Melissa's captions. Samuel's voice, sealed in pages and recordings and love. It was not a perfect document. It was better. It was real. And it was his final gift. Samuel Carter woke up coughing quietly into his pillow, the morning light filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. He took a shallow breath and sat up slowly, his body aching with the effort. He had long since learned not to draw attention to his weakness, especially not in front of Clara or Max. This morning, however, something was different. A soft knock on the door was followed by the gentle creak of it opening. Clara entered carrying a small tray with toast, orange juice, and a folded napkin. Her face was calm but shyly proud, her hazel green eyes watching him closely. "Good morning, Dad," she said, placing the tray on his bedside table. Samuel blinked slowly, surprised. "Clara, this is lovely." She gave a small shrug. "I thought you might want breakfast in bed. You've been tired lately." He reached out and squeezed her hand, his voice catching slightly. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means more than you know." Downstairs, Melissa and Elon were going over plans for a short trip. Samuel had insisted on staying home, claiming he needed the rest. But more than that, he wanted them to have time together as a unit, Melissa, Elon, and the kids. "He'll be okay while we're gone." Melissa asked Elon quietly, concern etched into her features. "I think he needs the quiet," Elon replied. "And I think he's preparing for something." Melissa nodded slowly, her eyes misting. Before they left, Samuel called Max and Clara into his room. He handed each of them a small, sealed envelope. "These are for the trip," he said, managing a faint smile. "Don't open them until you're far enough away that you can't hear me telling you not to cry." Max giggled and hugged him tightly. Clara held the envelope to her chest, her gaze never leaving her father's face. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes spoke volumes. On the road, the children chatted animatedly. Elon drove while Melissa navigated. They sang along to the radio, made up silly games, and laughed more than they had in weeks. Later, at a quiet lodge in the Texas Hill Country, Clara opened her envelope first. Inside was a photo of her and Samuel from a father-daughter dance, and a note in his handwriting. "You've always been brave, even when you didn't want to be. Keep being exactly who you are. I'll always be proud of you." Clara read it 3 times before sliding it back into the envelope. Her voice was soft when she spoke to Elon that night. "My dad used to make up bedtime stories with characters named after constellations. He always said I was his little Orion." Elon smiled. "That sounds like him." He's scared, isn't he?" she asked. Elon hesitated. "Yes, but he's also proud of you, and he's doing everything he can to make sure you never feel alone." Later, Max asked Elon about Melissa. "What was Mommy like when she was little?" Elon chuckled. "She once tried to build a treehouse in a mesquite tree by herself. Used duct tape and determination." Max laughed, picturing it vividly. He climbed into Elon's lap and rested his head on his shoulder. "Are you going to stay?" he whispered. Elon hugged him gently. "As long as you want me to." Back home, Samuel sat at his writing desk surrounded by photographs and mementos. His hands trembled slightly as he wrote letters, some for birthdays, others for graduations, a few for moments he'd never witnessed but wanted to share in. Between letters, he recorded audio messages, speaking slowly into a small microphone. "Max, when you lose your first tooth, you'll be braver than you think. Clara, when someone breaks your heart, you'll want to shut the world out, but don't. Let it in. Let love back in. He stopped more than once to collect himself, tears slipping down his cheeks. When the family returned, the children rushed in first, buzzing with stories of waterfalls, fireflies, and late-night ghost stories. Melissa lingered at the doorway. Samuel was waiting in his armchair in the living room, a blanket over his legs and the photo album on his lap. His face lit up when he saw them, pale but still filled with the warmth of recognition. "Welcome home," he whispered. Melissa knelt in front of him and took his hand. "They missed you. I missed you." Elon walked in carrying the bags. Samuel met his gaze and nodded, an unspoken acknowledgement of trust. That night, while the kids slept upstairs, Melissa sat beside Samuel. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. In the silence, between the pain and the love, a peace settled. He had given them his heart, and now they were carrying it forward. Dr. Samuel Carter sat in his study, the morning light painting long, golden streaks across the wooden floor. His hands moved slowly but with purpose as he packed 2 wooden boxes resting on the table. One was marked Clara, the other Max. Each box was filled with simple treasures. For Max, a small tin car, the kind they used to race down the hallway, a soft blue wristband from a theme park visit, photos of them building a blanket fort on a stormy day. For Clara, a worn leather bracelet Samuel used to wear on his morning walks with her, an old music box that played her favorite lullaby, a folded drawing she made when she was 5 with the words "Daddy's Girl" in crooked letters. Both boxes contained letters, carefully written, one for each year until adulthood. Next, Samuel turned to a separate envelope, addressed not to his children, but to Elon. The pen in his hand trembled. He paused, breathed deeply, and wrote, "Elon, you've grown into a part of this family. It wasn't easy, I know, but you stayed. You listened. You tried. When I'm gone, don't try to replace me. Just be there. Be their lighthouse in the storm. That's more than enough. Thank you." That evening, Elon entered the room quietly. Samuel had fallen asleep in the armchair, the family album resting open on his lap. A photo of Clara and Max building a sandcastle lay under his hand. Elon didn't disturb him. He simply adjusted the blanket over his shoulders and sat down nearby, watching the soft rise and fall of his breath. Upstairs, Clara and Melissa were stringing delicate fairy lights around Samuel's room. Clara balanced on a chair, taping the last strand above the window. "There," she whispered. "So he doesn't wake up in the dark." Melissa nodded, brushing a strand of hair from Clara's face. "He'll love it." In the living room, Max was on the floor with crayons scattered around him. He was finishing a drawing of a whole family, Mom, Dad, Clara, himself, and Elon. He held it up proudly to Melissa when she walked in. "I even gave Elon glasses," he said, "because he looks smarter that way." Melissa laughed, her heart aching and full at once. "He'll love that." Later that day, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, Melissa found a small cardboard container marked 1998. Inside were snapshots of her and Samuel when they first met, college graduation, early dates, their wedding day, and the day they brought Clara home from the hospital. She sat on the attic floor for a long time, holding a photo where they were both young, sun-kissed, and laughing. No regrets, just a quiet reverence for all they had lived. That evening, Elon entered Samuel's room holding a small, newly framed photo. In it, the whole family stood in the backyard, arms around each other, sunlight dappling their faces. Samuel took the frame with trembling hands. "You took this?" he asked. Elon nodded. "I wanted you to have something recent. All of us. Together." Samuel stared at the image a long time before placing it carefully on the nightstand beside his bed, angled just right to be the last thing he'd see before sleep. The next morning, the children helped Samuel in the garden. They wore gloves far too big and hats that drooped into their eyes. Samuel sat on a bench, offering guidance, while Max dug shallow holes and Clara gently patted soil around the base of each flower. "These will bloom every spring," Samuel said. so you'll always have something to look forward to, even when you're not here?" Max asked. Samuel nodded, especially then. They planted daisies, Samuel's favorite, and a few wildflowers Clara had picked herself. The garden was messy but alive, imperfect but full of heart. Afterward, they sat on a quilt in the yard with lemonade and cookies. Samuel told stories about Melissa's clumsy high school science project, about Clara's obsession with dinosaurs at age 6, and how Max once tried to mail himself to Santa. Elon brought his camera, but never raised it. For once, he didn't want to document anything. He just wanted to be there, fully, to feel the sun, the breeze, and the nearness of the people he now quietly called family. The day waned. Evening cast long shadows across the grass. Samuel sat quietly, watching his children, their voices a gentle hum around him. He looked at Elon, who met his gaze, and nodded. There was nothing left to prove, nothing left unsaid. Samuel leaned back, a tired but contented smile on his face. He was surrounded by every piece of his legacy, not in things but in people, in memories that would outlive him. And for the first time in a long time, he felt peace. The boxes were tucked safely away. The lights twinkled softly above. And Samuel Carter smiled, surrounded by his small, extraordinary family. Autumn arrived in Texas with a kind of softness that seemed to coat the Carter household in golden stillness. The days grew shorter, the air crisper, and the trees in the backyard turned warm shades of amber and rust. Samuel Carter, once always moving, now spent much of his time by the large window that faced the garden. Wrapped in a knit blanket, he sat quietly, watching the leaves drift from the trees like slow, deliberate goodbyes. Clara had taken to reading beside him as the afternoon light dimmed. She would sit cross-legged on the cushioned bench, a novel in her hands, her voice steady and low. Samuel didn't always follow the story, but the rhythm of her voice soothed him. Max, never far from his father, would sit on the floor, sketching with crayons. His drawings had become more family-oriented, pictures of all of them holding hands, smiling in bright-color houses under blue skies. Elon had taken full charge of the household routine, seamlessly integrating himself into the family's day-to-day life. He prepared meals, picked up prescriptions, managed school schedules, and quietly made sure everyone had what they needed. His cooking filled the house with warmth: rosemary chicken, cinnamon rolls, pumpkin soup. He had learned Max preferred apple slices peeled, and Clara liked her tea with 1 sugar, no milk. One late afternoon, Max climbed onto his father's lap with a blanket and whispered the song they had made up together long ago. Samuel, weakened but present, cradled his son gently and listened with closed eyes. The words were simple, but to him, they carried the weight of a lifetime. "You are my rocket. You are my star." Later that evening, Samuel made an unusual request. He wanted to sleep one last time in the children's room. Clara hesitated for a moment, but when she saw the quiet hope in her father's eyes, she nodded. They helped him into the room, Clara adjusting his pillows while Max held his hand. That night, Clara curled up next to her father, much like she had as a little girl during thunderstorms. Max slept on his other side, tucked under his arm. In the dim glow of the nightlight, Samuel looked between his children, memorizing every detail of their faces. Elon stood quietly by the door, watching the 3 of them. His hand rested on the frame, his eyes glassy. Melissa came up behind him and slipped her arm around his waist. No words were exchanged. They just stood there, witnessing a sacred moment of love and transition. The next morning, Samuel asked Elon to join him in the garden. The sky was bright, the air brisk. Fallen leaves crunched beneath their shoes as they walked slowly to the wooden bench near the flower beds. Samuel moved carefully, every step a quiet labor. They sat together in silence for a moment. "You know," Samuel began, his voice rough but clear, "I never thought I'd be okay with someone else in my children's lives." Elon remained still, listening. "But I see the way you look at them. The way you listen to Max's stories, the way you wait for Clara to warm up before speaking. That kind of patience, that's love." Elon looked down, humbled. "I will never try to take your place, Samuel. I couldn't. But I promise I'll build my own place in their lives with the same care you gave them." Samuel nodded slowly. "That's all I could ask for." He reached over and took Elon's hand with surprising strength. "You're part of this family now." The simplicity of the words hit Elon hard. He closed his eyes and gripped Samuel's hand tightly in return. That night, the stars came out brighter than usual. The sky above the house was clear, endless, and quietly majestic. Inside, laughter and soft conversation filled the home. Melissa served hot cocoa, Clara lit candles, and Max showed everyone his newest drawing. The whole family standing together in front of their house, with a rocket ship in the sky behind them. Samuel sat wrapped in his blanket, surrounded by everything he loved. The heaviness of goodbye still lingered, but it was held gently, cushioned by the love that had grown resilient and real. In that moment, no one said anything about the future. They simply lived it, together, in the glowing hush of autumn. Samuel Carter awoke with a sense of clarity that had been rare in recent weeks. Despite the weight in his chest and the ache in his bones, he called Melissa to his side and whispered, "Tonight, I want one last dinner with everyone. Simple but together." Melissa nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat, and set to work. Elon joined her in the kitchen, quietly washing vegetables and setting the table. Clara and Max helped fold napkins, each one with a unique crease and fold. The evening sun dipped lower as they prepared, casting long golden streaks through the kitchen windows. When the time came, the family gathered at the dinner table. A white linen cloth was draped over it, and a few candles flickered gently between the dishes. The scent of roasted chicken, sautéed greens, and warm bread filled the room. Samuel was helped to his seat, dressed in a soft navy sweater over a button-down shirt, looking both fragile and regal. He smiled faintly at the sight of his family, each face lit by soft candlelight. Melissa lifted her glass, her hand trembling slightly. "To family, to love that holds us, to moments like this." Her voice cracked but held steady. They all clinked glasses, the sound soft and sacred. Max, swinging his feet under the table, piped up with one of his signature jokes. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Laughter erupted, breaking the tension. Even Samuel chuckled, a low, warm sound that seemed to settle over them all. Elon stood and gently brought over dessert, a pecan pie, its buttery aroma filling the space. "I hope it turned out," he said. "I followed your recipe." Samuel nodded with a playful glint. "Then it's perfect." After dessert, Clara excused herself and returned with a small wrapped bundle. She handed it to her father with both hands. "I made this. It's just memories." Samuel opened the handmade journal slowly. Inside were sketches, notes, favorite quotes, and small pasted photographs. Her handwriting was careful, the drawings tender. He ran his fingers over the pages as if absorbing them through touch. "This," he whispered, "is the most beautiful thing I've ever received." Time blurred after that. Melissa put on a soft jazz record. The warm hum of saxophone and piano floated through the living room. Clara lay on the floor reading. Max leaned against Elon, who held him gently, one hand on his shoulder. Then, unexpectedly, Melissa held her hand out to Samuel. "Dance with me?" He rose with effort, leaning on her as they moved slowly in the living room, her hand around his waist, his cheek on her temple. It wasn't about movement, it was about presence. Clara looked up, her hazel green eyes wide with emotion. Max stayed silent, watching with the quiet seriousness only children sometimes understand. As the music faded, Samuel turned to each of them. He met their eyes one by one, Clara, Max, Melissa, Elon. In each gaze he lingered. No words, only a silent farewell, full of gratitude, love, and deep acceptance. Elon, voice low and steady, opened a book he had brought from the shelf and read. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, "I will try again tomorrow." And love is never wasted even when it hurts. Samuel nodded, the corners of his eyes damp. That night, no one retreated far. The bedrooms remained close. Melissa tucked Max in, Clara leaned against the doorframe. Elon stayed up, checking on everyone, until at last, all the lights were out. Samuel made his way to the front porch with Elon's help and sat in his favorite chair. A light blanket covered his legs, and a small mug of tea rested on the side table. He tilted his head back and looked at the stars, his breathing soft and shallow. Above him, the sky stretched wide, filled with silent constellations. The air was crisp but not cold. A peace settled over him as the candles flickered behind the windows. And then, as the clock neared midnight, the house rested in stillness. Samuel closed his eyes. The last breath was quiet, like the turning of a page, and the night held him gently as he let go. The morning arrived quietly. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in narrow golden ribbons, casting a soft glow on the wooden floors of the Carter home. The world outside continued to spin, as always, birds chirping faintly, wind rustling leaves in the yard, but inside the house, everything had changed. Melissa entered the bedroom slowly, holding 2 mugs of tea, one for her and one for Samuel. It had become their quiet ritual during his final weeks: tea, small talk, a glance at the garden outside his window. But this time, she sensed something before she even reached the bed. His chest didn't rise. His hands lay too still. The peaceful look on his face was unmistakable. She put the mugs down without a sound. Her knees weakened as she sat beside him, her fingers trembling as they touched his still warm hand. She didn't scream. She didn't call out. Instead, Melissa leaned forward and curled into him, tears falling silently as she cradled the man she had loved, battled with, raised children beside, and now had to let go. Down the hallway, Elon had already risen. He'd heard the quiet in the house, but somehow it felt louder than any cry. He guided Max and Clara gently to the kitchen. He didn't say anything at first. He poured orange juice, set toast on their plates, and smiled softly when Max asked if Daddy was still asleep. When Melissa finally appeared at the doorway, eyes swollen and voice quiet, Clara knew before she spoke. She rose from the chair, knocking it back without a sound, and ran toward her mother. Melissa caught her mid-run and held her tightly as Clara wept, her small fists pressed into Melissa's back. Max looked around the room, puzzled. "Is Daddy with the stars now?" he asked. Elon knelt beside him. "Yes, buddy," he said softly. "Your dad went to sleep, and now he's part of the sky. He's always going to be with you." That day unfolded like a dream wrapped in fog. The house stood in mourning, but there was no chaos. No wailing, just the hush of grief mixed with love. Elon answered the phone calls. Melissa sat in her room for an hour, curled on the edge of the bed. Clara refused to let go of Samuel's hand until the final moment. Max held a drawing he made the night before, the whole family standing under a tree, Samuel drawn bigger than everyone else, smiling. The preparations for the ceremony began that same afternoon. Elon and Melissa sat together at the dining room table. A list of guests, music choices, Samuel's favorite quotes. There was comfort in the details, in making sure every part of the farewell reflected who he was: calm, thoughtful, full of quiet strength. The service was held 3 days later under a canopy of oak trees at a small memorial garden. Friends, neighbors, hospital colleagues, and relatives all came, some in tears, others wearing soft smiles as they shared stories. Clara stepped to the podium first. She was shaking as she unfolded the paper, but her voice, though fragile, didn't waver. "My dad once told me," she read, "that being strong doesn't mean hiding how you feel. It means being honest about what matters." He mattered. He always will. Tears slid down her cheeks as she looked out at the crowd. "He taught me how to read, how to forgive, how to take care of people, and I will always remember that." Max walked up next. In his small hands, he held a paper flower, one he had made with Clara's help. Without saying a word, he placed it gently atop the closed casket, then turned to look at the sky. "Hi, Daddy," he whispered. "I see you." Elon stood back near the trees, his hands clasped in front of him, his eyes glistening but focused. He watched each moment as though memorizing it. Every glance, every word, every tear. He didn't try to lead. He didn't try to comfort with grand gestures. He was just there, anchoring the day with his quiet presence. When Melissa spoke, her voice cracked only once. "Samuel was the love of my life," she said, looking upward, "but also the kindest co-parent, the gentlest soul, and the most generous heart I've ever known. Thank you, all of you, for honoring him today. And thank you, Samuel, for every day you gave us." After the ceremony, the family stood under the oak trees, arms wrapped tightly around one another. A circle. Melissa, Clara, Max, and Elon. Grief moved through them like the wind, sometimes heavy, sometimes light, but always there. But beneath it, something stronger was beginning to form. A bond, a legacy of love passed down through the man who had just left them. That night, the house was quiet again. The framed photo Elon had given Samuel of the entire family together in the garden was now set on the mantel, surrounded by small candles. Clara laid her drawing-filled notebook next to it. Max's paper flower sat in a glass bowl nearby. Melissa tucked the children into bed. She kissed Clara's forehead and whispered, "He's always with you." She stroked Max's hair as he drifted to sleep, his breathing slow and even. Elon sat alone on the porch, the same chair Samuel had favored. The stars were out, clear and bright above the Texas sky. He didn't say anything, didn't cry, just watched, silently honoring a man who had trusted him with the most important gift of all. Inside the house, in every corner, in every picture, in every gentle laugh from a child, Samuel remained. His absence would be felt forever, but so would his presence. The sun filtered through the kitchen window in a soft beam, catching motes of dust that danced slowly in the morning air. The house had grown quieter since the funeral, not silent, but quieter in the way a body still breathes after crying. The rhythm of life had been broken and rearranged, but it hadn't stopped. Elon stood in the hallway, holding Clara's school bag. He had offered to take her to school that morning, just the two of them. Melissa was sitting on the sofa with Max, who was still chewing the last of his toast. Clara came down the stairs, her shoes already tied, hair neatly pinned with her usual 2 pink barrettes. She gave Elon a quick nod, not quite a smile, but not indifference either. The car ride was quiet at first. Clara looked out the window, watching the passing trees, their leaves now deep gold and orange. Elon kept his hands on the wheel, glancing sideways occasionally, uncertain whether to speak. But it was Clara who broke the silence. "I'm not used to it without him." "I know," Elon said softly. "I'm not either." She looked down at her hands, then back out the window. "But I'm glad it was peaceful. I think he wanted it to be." He nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, he did." At a red light, she finally turned toward him. "Thanks for coming to the ceremony and for not trying to be him." "I'd never try," he said, "but I'll always be here if you need someone." Clara gave the smallest nod, permission maybe. Elon parked in front of the school. Before getting out, she hesitated, then muttered, "Thanks for driving me." That alone felt like a bridge had been crossed. At home, Max was at the kitchen table with crayons and paper. He looked up as Elon walked in, his blue eyes curious and tentative. "Elon?" Max asked, holding up a drawing of a stick figure family. "Yeah, buddy." Max hesitated, twisting a crayon between his fingers. "Is it okay if sometimes I call you Daddy?" Elon's breath caught in his chest. He knelt down, eye to eye with the boy. "If you want to," he said, his voice steady but soft, "you can call me whatever feels right. I'd be honored." Max smiled and threw his arms around his neck. Elon held him tight, closing his eyes. It was the most sacred embrace he'd ever known. That evening, the kitchen filled with the sounds of quiet movement, running water, the soft tap of knives on a cutting board. Clara stood beside her mother, helping slice carrots for dinner. Melissa didn't speak much, and neither did Clara, but their silence wasn't strained. It was filled with purpose, a soft harmony that hovered between generations of grief and growth. Melissa reached over and gently tucked a strand of hair behind Clara's ear. Clara didn't flinch. "I think your dad would have liked this dinner," Melissa said softly. Clara didn't reply, but she kept chopping, and her hands didn't shake. The house had changed in small ways. Samuel's photos were everywhere, not in a shrine-like display, but scattered naturally through the home. One in the hallway, smiling with Max on his shoulders. One in the study, with Clara perched on his lap, mid-laugh. The images didn't haunt, they reminded. In the den, Elon had started a mural. A corkboard covered in handwritten notes, ticket stubs, old postcards, and a few Polaroids he had taken. At the center was a photo of Samuel holding both children, arms wide like wings. Clara passed by it one afternoon and stopped. She didn't say anything, but she pinned a small note under it, "Thank you for every single day." Clara joined the school theater club a week later. She came home holding a script and flushed with excitement. It had been her father's dream that she try acting, and though she had resisted before, now it felt right. Melissa hugged her gently, whispering that he'd be proud. Max had a science project about plants. He chose to build a diorama of their family garden, complete with little cardboard flowers and green paper leaves. When Elon helped him label each section, Max named one, Dad's favorite roses. Another section read, Elon's sunflowers. They laughed together over the crooked stems, and Elon felt a quiet joy swell in his chest. At night, Elon and Melissa often found themselves in the living room after the kids had gone to bed. Sometimes she would lie on the couch with her head on his shoulder, and they'd sit in silence. No need for talk, their gestures spoke enough. A shared glance over the rim of a coffee mug. A squeeze of the hand when one of them paused too long at a memory. On the bookshelf, between legal texts and old novels, Melissa had placed a small, leather-bound notebook. It was Samuel's journal, the last few pages filled with thoughts about the children, about Elon, about love. Melissa had read them all. One line had stuck with her, "Let the ones I love grow around my absence, not within it." In the mornings now, Melissa brewed 2 mugs of coffee instead of one. She sat at the table and watched as Elon packed the kids' lunches, checked homework, adjusted Max's shoelaces. There were moments where she forgot to be strong, and in those moments, Elon carried the weight without question. The grief never fully left, but it softened like a dull ache on a healed bone, still felt, but no longer blinding. One morning, Clara came downstairs already dressed for school. She passed Elon on the way to the kitchen, and without looking up from her phone, she said, "You're going to be late if you don't get ready." He blinked. "Is that sarcasm?" She shrugged, "Just trying to be helpful." He grinned. "Then I better hurry." Clara smirked, just a little, but was real. That day began like so many others would now. Different, imperfect, quieter, but also full of something else, something deeper. A new day had started, and within it, space had opened for love, for sorrow, and for something they were only beginning to name, healing. The breeze was soft and smelled faintly of wildflowers as the sun filtered through the canopy of oak trees at the local park. Months had passed since Samuel's departure, but the space he once filled had not vanished, it had simply changed form. Now it lived in every shared glance, every remembered phrase, and every quiet act of love. Melissa sat on a wooden bench under the shade of a sycamore, a picnic basket at her side, and her amber hazel eyes following the scene unfolding just a few feet ahead. Clara and Max were chasing each other through the grass, laughter rising into the crisp spring air, their joy no longer tentative, but full and free. Elon stood a few steps back, camera in hand, waiting for the right moment. Max, flushed and giggling, flung his arms around Clara's waist just as Elon pressed the shutter. The image captured their shared laughter, open, honest, and whole. It was a small, ordinary moment, but in this new chapter of their lives, it felt sacred. Melissa noticed Elon lower the camera, a soft expression settling across his face. He turned to her with a quiet nod, no words needed. She smiled back, tears blurring the edges of her vision. Later, beneath the shade of a maple tree, Clara unfolded a sheet of lined notebook paper. "I wrote this for my English class," she said, her voice a little shaky. "We had to write about the people we love most." Everyone fell silent as she began to read. "My dad taught me how to be brave without showing off. He listened without interrupting. He was quiet in the best ways. I miss him every day. But love doesn't disappear when someone leaves. It just finds a new way to stay. Elon doesn't try to be my dad, but he makes space for all the love that's still here. And I think my dad would be okay with that, because I am." Her words hung in the air like music. Elon looked down, blinking quickly. Max clapped softly. Melissa reached over and squeezed Clara's hand, pride and grief mingling in her touch. That night, Max climbed into Elon's lap while they sat on the back porch, fireflies blinking around the garden's edge. "Can I call you Daddy sometimes?" Max asked, his voice tiny but firm. Elon's throat tightened. He placed a gentle hand on Max's back. "You can call me whatever you feel in your heart," he whispered. "That's what matters." Melissa watched from the kitchen window as Max rested his head against Elon's chest. There was no resistance in the boy's body, only trust, only love. Inside the house, photos of Samuel still adorned the walls. One in particular sat in a hand-carved frame on the mantel. Samuel seated in the garden, Max beside him, a small trowel in hand, their faces alight with laughter. Below it, Elon had carefully arranged a new collage. Drawings, pressed leaves, old ticket stubs, and snippets of Samuel's handwriting. A mural not of a man gone, but of one still woven into the soul of the home. One afternoon, they returned to the garden where they had once planted flowers with Samuel. The roses had bloomed in defiance of winter's passing, their petals bold against the soft greenery. Max ran ahead and pointed to a flower that had grown next to the one Samuel had favored. "This one wasn't here before," he shouted with glee. Elon crouched beside him. "Maybe it grew because he left something behind," he said. Clara knelt down and gently traced the petals. "Maybe it's his way of saying hi." A few days later, the family took a trip to the coast. The beach was quiet, the tide low. Clara walked along the shoreline, dragging a stick through the wet sand. When she stopped, Melissa approached and saw what she had written. Samuel. The name stretched across the sand, delicate and firm. A wave came in and kissed the letters, then slowly pulled back, leaving the shape intact. Nearby, Elon held Max's hand as they watched the sky shift from gold to lavender. "Do you think Daddy can see the beach from up there?" Max asked. Elon squeezed his fingers gently. "I think he's everywhere you carry him." Max nodded solemnly, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small shell. "I'm gonna keep this forever." When they returned home, Elon went to the attic and retrieved the box we kept Samuel's letters and photo albums. He added Max's shell to the collection, not because it belonged to Samuel, but because it was part of the story Samuel had helped begin. That evening, while the others slept, Elon stepped outside alone. The sky was crystal clear, the stars brighter than usual. He sat on the porch swing, holding a cup of tea Samuel once favored, and looked up at the sky with quiet reverence. "Thank you, Samuel," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the chirp of crickets. "Thank you for your strength, for your legacy, for loving so deeply that even in absence, you remain a guidepost." In time, the grief faded to a softer hue, but the love stayed. In the quiet rituals, the shared meals, the bedtime stories, and even in Clara's newfound passion for theater or Max's experiments in the garden, Samuel lived. Not as a shadow, but as a light reflected in each of them. And in Elon's steadiness, in Melissa's strength, and in the laughter of two children learning how to carry both loss and love, his legacy endured. A new day began. A different kind of love took root, not replacing the old, but growing beside it. And in that there was peace. Has this story reminded you of someone you've loved and lost, or someone who stayed when it mattered most? Leave a comment below with a memory it brought to your heart. I read and respond to everyone with care.